Hey y'all, I'm Shauna. Welcome to the channel. Welcome to another video. Today I have a fun one for you. Back in December of 2020, during the first year of my channel, I made this video that is now my most popular video. I sat down for 32 minutes and I talked about my best advice and tips after my year on a no-buy. So in this video, I'm going to be reacting to this old video. I haven't watched it in probably, it's saying 2 years, but December 2020 was like 3 years ago. So I haven't watched it since, and I'm going to be reacting to it. I'm going to be letting you know if I agree with this stuff still, if my opinion has changed, if it's nuanced. My overall opinion on no buys is like kind of different than it was in 2020. In 2020, Shauna would probably be a little surprised, to be frank. I think that there's going to be a video that I'll talk all about it, all about kind of how my mindset has changed on no buys. But for now, we're going to be reacting to this, and I just think it's going to be a fun one. All right, we're going to get into it. I'm going to skip past the intro, and we're just going to go to point number one. No matter when you're watching this, if it's January 1st, 2021, March 14th or July 29th, there is never a wrong time to start a no buy. You don't need to wait for the next month or the next year. I agree. If you think a no buy is right for you, there's no real reason to wait till like January 1st or anything like that. One of the things I've heard people who come onto my channel, they'll say that they've gone on one like right before Black Friday because that's one of the times that they're like really spendy, and that's also one of the times that their motivation is highest. I think ultimately the right time to go on a no buy when you feel the motivation. I feel like it's going to be the strongest at the beginning. So doing it before a major holiday or time that you've kind of been a little bit more spendy is probably a really great time than just waiting for January 1st. Even though January 1st is much more convenient, if I want to go on a no-buy today, I would be 3 months into a no-buy by the time January 1st rolled around. I don't think there's much need to stay at this point, so we're going to go right to point number two. The next one would be to watch as many kind of videos with rules and year-end wrap-ups as you can, because I found a lot of people have different takes on their rules and like what specifically they're governing in their no-buy, and a lot of people are really trying to make sure their most strict or their most problematic areas are the ones that their no-buy is covering. Some people are more expansive than others. Some people have particular rules for gift cards or coffee. I think hearing different perspectives on how these... Okay, I'm laughing here because I agree with this point that hearing a lot of different perspectives is going to be helpful. And I think that you should do that. If you want to go to no buy, I think what you should do is you should listen to people who have succeeded and people who have failed. And I think in specific, hearing people who have failed at a no buy or have had to make multiple attempts, I think those people are probably people that you should listen to more. I think that there are more lessons to learn, there's more information to glean than the people who've had successes. In addition to that, when you are in this space, I've seen like hundreds of different iterations of rules. People, in my opinion, tend to be super strict and have like no wiggle room, or like leave as little wiggle room as possible. Or on the converse, they'll leave as much to like interpretation to be as open-ended as possible, where it's like they want to be able to justify all kinds of spending. I think if you are in this space where you're looking just at people who are creating no-buy rules, I think you'll find a lot of similarities than like people who are different. And so that's why I feel like hearing the people who have not had success is more valuable. And ultimately, I don't love no buys anymore. I think that there's a time and a place. Absolutely. Oh, hold on, I feel like I need to back up here. I think short-term no buys can be wonderful. And I'll probably do no buy January this year. Short-term no buys can be this like really great data mining tool, but long-term no buys can be a colossal mistake for some people. Yet people still feel like they need to embark on it because that's what they're seeing around them. The main reason why I went on a no buy in 2020 was because I saw this as the like only solution out there. Like in my mind, there was a formula: shopping problem equals no buy equals fixed. And I don't think you could have told me any different in 2020. And so I feel like some people also view it as a rite of passage. I think if you actually want to change your shopping habits, no buys might not be the best option for you because they can lead to more excessive spending, and ultimately like there's just a whole slew of problems with them. They don't address things like shopping habits, which are really what that's how you shop, is through your shopping habits. No buys don't address that, and you can't even say that you are going to make your no buy project address shopping habits because you're not shopping. So what shopping habits are you going to use? This whole thing on rules, I just like don't love because people are so rigid and that's what causes the problems. You don't have experience not shopping. So you're then going to put super rigid rules on somebody who hasn't had rigid rules for years probably. And then there's going to be chafing that happens. There's going to be a struggle that happens. And like, are you mentally prepared to buy something, break your rules? And when I say mentally prepared, will doing that create this knock-on effect or the spiral effect where you like spiral shop? Will it affect your self-esteem? Will you be able to pick yourself back up? I think, in my opinion, those are way more important questions than like, how rigid can I make my rules? So if you are playing the field and you are looking at what people are doing, my hope would be that you would find people who have like really interesting or diverse perspectives. I've realized from watching other people's videos that some of their things aren't for me, or some of their rules aren't for me. I've even heard many of you come up with really great ideas about just tweaking some specific things. Like they're only going to allow in certain number of palettes, or they're going to be able to get in nail services. And I do think as well, one thing to consider is what part of your life is your no buy going to govern? Is it just going to look at makeup or beauty, skincare stuff? Is it going to be a true like robust no buy where you're not buying anything? But even then, I feel like people will say, oh, it doesn't apply to eating out. It doesn't apply to coffee. Well, how much money do you spend on eating out and coffee? If that represents a significant portion of your budget, or if that is the trouble area, then it would make so much sense to do so. My second follow-up to that is to do a trial run for a week or a month. Do a trial run. I don't think that's a bad idea. I think what is ultimately a better idea is to track your spending. Don't worry about rules for a while. Track your spending. If you want to know how you spend and why you spend, track your spending for a week or a month. Then you'll see where your money is going, and you can make informed decisions about where you might want your rules to apply instead of like doing all this guesswork. And I mean, you should have an inclination about how you are spending your money. But if you were anything like me, my head was in the sand. I wanted it to be there because I didn't want to know. I didn't want to know how much money I was spending on stuff, because then I would have to face my problems and change my habits, which I didn't want to do. So if you truly aren't sure how and where you're spending your money, what is ultimately the better choice, in my opinion, track your spending and categorize it for a few weeks. I think 2 minimum, but 2 to 4 would be best. Categorize it into like groceries, takeout / eating out, beauty, home goods. I'm sure there's more things we could think about that you buy on like a monthly basis. Categorize that, see how much you're spending on this stuff, and then decide, okay, how do I feel about my spending and what do I want to do about it? How much am I willing to cut back? Also, no buy might not be the answer. You might need a low buy. Maybe it's truly just beauty and you don't want to buy any beauty, or maybe it's everything across the board, just kind of needs to be tweaked a little bit. I also don't necessarily think that we should just assume that a no buy is the solution. A budget might work, a low buy might work, other things might work as well. Foresee everything, no matter how much you plan. And I've heard other people say, try and plan for all the gray areas that you can. Like gift cards or gifting or dates or books or eating out or tools of your trade or shoes, or what do you do if your favorite pants rip? Trying to get as much of that gray area as possible. And for me, the purpose of that is the trial run, because things inevitably pop up that you never expected. However, things change, and that was very clear in the pandemic year. Nobody saw it coming, and it really changed a lot of things for myself and for a lot of people. And so one of the things that was a rule initially was no backups, but I changed my mind on that very specifically because of this year. Okay, this is, I think, overall sound advice. I think you should be open and flexible to multiple things. One, having your no buy last longer than a year, having your no buy last shorter than a year, but also to be flexible to changing circumstance as it comes up. I mentioned the pandemic year in here because I started my no buy in January. The pandemic hit in March, and we were all like, what the is happening? In this video, when I was talking about changing circumstance, I was thinking more along the lines of changing your rules. If something comes up, tweaking them. Yes, but what I think what you should also extend that to is changing life circumstance. Are you mentally well enough to continue your no buy? How is your home life? How is all of these kinds of things? Because if you all of a sudden are faced with a job loss, a death in the family, a breakup, you might not have the bandwidth to deal with that personal circumstance as well as your no buy. If you lose a job, yeah, you might need to budget, and your no buy might be as important than ever. But it's also a colossal project that can consume a lot of your time and energy. And you may need to refocus and prioritize other things, such as getting better or dealing with your difficult life moment. This is also where I think prioritizing habits just matters way more, because our stress response is going to come out in these stressful times. And do you go to stuff as a stress response? Do you go to shopping as a stress response? Not being able to use your coping mechanism during an incredibly stressful time is going to add more stress. The first thing I would do be to try and prepare for these kinds of situations. If I wanted to go in a no buy, I would want to know, straight off the bat, what are my habits here? How do I shop? Why do I shop? And do I go to stuff as a coping mechanism? If I do, I need to be prepared for those moments where I'm going to need to deal with stress and figure out how to deal with it in a different way. I think for a lot of people, the reason why they break their no buy is not because they couldn't control themselves. It's because they bought stuff in a shopping spiral, or they bought stuff in a response to stress, and it was part of their coping mechanism, and they hadn't adequately dealt with that previously. There's lots of reasons people break no buys, but I feel like that is a prominent one, and that's something that you should heavily consider. In mind is budgeting outside of your no buy, if this is not something you're already doing. One of my own personal issues that I had talked about in my intro was that I had no kind of concept of my finances. And I can link my intro video if you're interested in that. And it wasn't just that I was overspending on makeup and clothing, but it was the fact that I hadn't really kind of controlled or budgeted for anything. And it was just kind of willy-nilly. So yes, reducing or eliminating your spending on makeup or clothing is great, but I think it's also really excellent to budget in other parts of your life. And so that is what was kind of governing my eating out with my partner and our dates, or the grocery trips, or the haircuts. Okay. This isn't like a bad piece of advice, budgeting outside of your, by category. I think what I would say now would be to consider all of your categories before deciding what you are not going to buy. I think it could be impulse to be like, oh, I overspend just on clothes, so I'm just going to focus on clothes. And if you are tracking your spending, then you will get a whole picture of everything, because your situation might not be as bad as you expected, or it could be a whole lot worse than you expected. So that is important. And if you are just not buying clothes, but let's say you have debt and you're still continuing to shop in harmful, like financially harmful ways in other categories, not buying clothes isn't going to really do the thing that you want it to do. If you've never budgeted before, I don't think that you're necessarily just going to succeed with a budget right off the bat. What I have learned since this video, the reason why I have rarely, if never, been successful with a budget until like the last year and a half, this is not like a knowledge problem. This is an implementation problem. It wasn't as though I didn't want to budget or I didn't want to change my finances. It was that my shopping habits sucked. So it didn't matter if I told myself I had $50 for this category. Like, that was irrelevant because my shopping habits weren't in check. Like, I can't apply a budget if I don't have the shopping habits or the skills to stick to the budget. If you are shopping as a coping mechanism, then a budget is going to be irrelevant to your emotional state. So before you go to the budget, you need to go to the skills. You need to go to the habits. But I think that you need to do more than that. My recommendation is to be able to know more than your why, to be able to have that accessible to you, readable to you, or even creating a video. Because momentum and inspiration is not steady, it stagnates. You have your peaks and your valleys. I've had some incredibly low points in 2021 where, in 2020 I've fallen off the wagon, if you will. And it's just not 100% all year for most people. So if you have something that is accessible to you, if you're better with paper and you feel like if you have this thing that's written down that's close by in your desk, you know where it is, and you read it, that's really going to strike you, I really suggest you do that. Or if you feel like watching yourself in a video would be more helpful, I really suggest doing that. Because for me, speaking some of the things that I said, like saying them out loud, was a game changer. And it was like really impactful to say out loud, hey, I don't know my finances. I feel dumb saying that out loud. And saying that out loud was like, whoa, Sean, you need to figure this out. Okay, I do actually agree with this, that you need to have a why. You need to put it somewhere really accessible, and it needs to emotionally resonate with you 100%. I also think that speaking it out loud makes a lot of sense. At the time, I hadn't really thought about this concept of mirror work. Never heard about it before. Go look it up. You talk to yourself in front of a mirror. And one of the reasons why you do that is because voicing things out loud makes something real. Oh, also, what I said about motivation is absolutely true. Motivation is a finite resource. It will not last. So you need to work on habits and systems. And I feel like your why is I said here, your why is your last line of defense. And so you need something that will emotionally resonate with you. I would kind of push this a little bit further now. What I would say is if your why isn't a catalyst, your why probably isn't strong enough. What I mean by that is I read somewhere, I think it might have been Brianna Weiss, who was talking about changing your life. Most people only change their life when they hit rock bottom. The rock bottom is their catalyst because you have that breaking point, right? You can't feel that way anymore. You can't do that thing anymore. And If you've experienced a breaking point in your life, you know what I'm talking about. If you've experienced rock bottom, you know what I'm talking about. I'm calling it a catalyst because you don't need to be at a breaking point or rock bottom in order to make a change. You need a catalyst. You need something on those days where like shit hits the fan. You need to find your catalyst. If you have not had something that is your catalyst, I think there's going to be struggle. And also there are ways to write about things in order to kind of pull on your emotions a little bit more. I mean, you're writing to yourself, so I'm not saying like manipulate yourself or other people, but like the line that sticks with me to this day: do you want to sacrifice your financial future for shoes? Insert thing you overbuy. Do you want to sacrifice your ability to own a home for lipstick? That to me is the kind of stuff where I go, yeah, I don't think that lipstick is worth a home. Sorry. And I think that ways you can write in ways to help you induce a perspective shift. I really would encourage you to set goals for savings or paying down debt and keeping track of those things. I found it really helpful to like write out a monetary amount of what I wanted to save, because looking at that growth, establishing clear financial goals, absolutely. I do this now. I have a little, at the time I didn't, but right now I have a little honey pot that like I color in every time I save $1,000. You need clear. I think you should have clear financial goals, whether it's paying down debt, saving up money, and you can put these anywhere you want. I love coloring stuff in, so it goes on a bulletin board where I color stuff in. We don't need to stay here long either, so we're gonna move on. Inventory. I totally suggest this if you are thinking about going on a no-buy, you just started, or you're somewhere you're watching this video for motivation because you're already in a no-buy. Do the freaking inventory. Inventory everything. All of your makeup, all of your hair products, all of your skincare products, all of your bath products. And if you can, do your clothes too. It is shocking, and it like disgusted me the first time I did that. I was like, holy shit, I have so much stuff and I'm just looking for more. Like there's more. I want more. I've talked about this kind of ad nauseum on my channel, and just our homes being containers to just inventories are, I think, a super great thing to do. One of the things that I now would say are like ways to kind of make the no-buy sustainable are through distraction projects, things that can distract you from the fact that you're on a no-buy. I think actually saving inventories for moments where you might need a little bit of a boost is a great idea. Like if you're feeling like you want to break your no-buy, you're feeling wishy-washy, you need a little bit of motivation, you can create motivation artificially. And one way you can do that is to inventory your stuff. I'm not a beauty channel anymore. So what I would say is inventory all of the things that you can in areas that you feel like you overspent. So if it's beauty products, great. If it's home decor, if it's clothes, if it's paints, if it's books, whatever, do it. I think also, depending on your area, one thing you could also kind of do would be how much, I'm going to take books as an example. Let's say I have 200 books. How many of these books have I read? How many of these are to be read? And you can maybe do some numbers there. I love that. You could do that with like anything that's like open versus not open. That could potentially work for something like makeup if you are a person who carries a lot of backups. That definitely wouldn't work for clothes, but you can definitely do like how many of these clothes have I worn in the last year or last 6 months? I think you could also track them. Oh yeah, the very next thing is challenges. I frame them as challenges throughout. I guess I'm going to talk about these two things together. Doing things to consume your time and energy are like really great ideas. And one of the reasons why I inventory stuff is because I wanted to know the extent of the damage, but also like how much do I have to use up in like consumable areas. And then also there was this feeling of disgust of like, how dare I own 300 makeup products and then also tell myself that I need more. And when you realize how much you have, that can be part of the reframing project. And anytime you kind of feel like I want to buy more stuff, you can go to your inventory and be like, yes, I have 52 blushes. Sorry, I don't need 52 blushes. One of the things I did recently, which I loved, which kind of like took stuff to the next level, was framing how much makeup I owned in years. Like how many years would it take me to get through my makeup? I did like an average of like 1 year per lipstick as an example. And then I did that for all my lipsticks. And I don't know, I think I had something like 36 years worth of lipstick. That, helped me reframe how long it takes me to use stuff. Still like a distraction project, but also kind of gives me some context when I want to buy more things. To kind of keep things fresh and exciting all year are challenges for yourself, for makeup, skincare, and even clothing, depending on what's in your no-buy. Creating capsule wardrobes and kind of diving into that world for the first time, so incredibly helpful to me and like helping me want less and realizing not just how much I have. That for capsules, you could do mask challenges, 1 month, 1 mask, or 1 month, 1 palette. There's so many different kinds of ways. Like I'm calling them challenges, but they're not all quite challenges that you could implement to keep things fresh and exciting. I'm calling it like, that was like part A, this is part B. Okay, I talked about tracking your empties. I don't really know that like that made or my year. I think it's fun to do. I don't really think, okay, in my no-buy year, I was a little bit flabbergasted at how many like fall packs and samples I had. If that's motivating to you, do it. You could track your empties in a lot of ways. But one thing I don't talk about in this video at all, I snuck a peek and looked at what was at the end. I don't talk about gratitude anywhere. And the main reason I had to talk about it now, like the 2 things I talk about now, 3 things: habits, gratitude, contentment. Listen, y'all, this is the place to talk about it, because one of the reasons why you want to do these projects is to learn to appreciate what you have. If you truly want to stop shopping and you want to enjoy what you have, you need to, in some kind of capacity, start learning to appreciate what you have. I know I use this analogy a lot, but if you can't see the forest for the trees, you can appreciate the trees. If you can't, like if you're always looking out at like newer, nicer things, which you probably were doing if you were shopping, you can't even like recognize or acknowledge the amazing, beautiful makeup you already have because you're not looking at it. So doing these kinds of projects can help you appreciate what you already own. And there are so many different ways that you can learn to appreciate what you own. And so I think that having gratitude and appreciation is an essential part of your no-buy can go a really long way and can also help make the no-buy suck a little bit less. One of the reasons why a no-buy sucks is because if you are a shopper, one of the reasons why you appreciate something is because it's new and you've developed that as a habit. Something is good to you because it's new. Once it's not new anymore, it's no longer something that you appreciate. So you need to learn to appreciate something once it's not new, once it's past its like new kind of shiny stage. And that's like going to be a hard habit to learn if you haven't done that for months or years even. And so coming up with these challenges is like a really great way to do that. And if you're not here for makeup, and let's say you're doing something like books, you could do so many different book challenges. Like 1 week, 1 shelf, or like picking books at random, or doing like some kind of prompt list for your books. Or maybe if you have like art supplies, doing like themed challenges with things on YouTube. Like there's so many ways to learn how to appreciate your stuff. And I personally feel like unless you learn that, then you can really easily fall back into only having appreciation for something when it's new once your no-buy is done. I should say it's an essential skill to keep the work that you've done in your no-buy, like having that stick. Is to create a running wish list of all the things you've loved and wanted throughout the year. this could just be something simple as a list on your phone, and that, is what it's been for me, because there's been a lot of stuff that I've lusted after. Pretty hardcore, including some like sweaters or jeans, even some boots, and a lot of makeup too. And so I just want to just give one example. There was an Olive and June nail polish set that I lusted after for probably a good 3 to 4 months. I wanted it so bad. And now, at the end of the year, yeah, Olive and June. This is a great point. And I have created my intentional shopping kind of tracker now. And I put in the thing, and once I don't buy it, I filter it for no. Or if I buy it, I filter it for yes. And there's lots of other great things on there, like helping me decipher between needs and wants. I also think that's a skill that you need to relearn if you are going on a no-buy. It's probably one, or you've probably conflated the two. So that is also part of it. I've just like kind of taken this and like amped it up a little bit. The next recommendation, which is definitely a more obvious one, but like a little friendly reminder to you, is that delete your most tempting apps, mailing list, Instagram accounts, and YouTube. Yes, delete all of the things. Delete them from your phone, delete them from your emails, whatever. Also, delete the people that make you want to spend. Also, the YouTube channels that make you want to spend. Don't do it. There's like also some channels now, like Instagram accounts, it's just like people showing their cute outfits and like they have capsule wardrobes. And I'm like, I want all of your clothes and I just like can't handle them in certain seasons of my life. So I just delete them. That's fine. You could be a part of, there's a no-buy community on there if that's what you're interested in. There's, I think it's like makeup rehab as well. There's also YouTube channels of low-buy, no-buy content creators. And I created my own community. It's the best decision I could have made to make this no-buy the most successful that it can be. I had to hold myself accountable on this platform. And I also was able to talk to so many of you who were on a no-buy yourself, or people who are much farther along in their kind of conscious consumer journey. People who are telling me the things that they've implemented in their own lives, telling me about their favorite things and what they've done. I found that so inspiring to talk to all different kinds of people who are in different places of their journey. And all right, so this one, another great point, find a community, find support. There are those Reddit community I was talking to you about, r/no-buy is one of them. I still go in there from time to time. That's a great place. You can find people. There's actually a lot of creators now who have done no-buys. Even like in 2019, when I was getting inspiration for my no-buy, there wasn't a lot at the time, but now there are so many channels that are there's probably some more before I wasn't even aware of. I was kind of like stuck in that beauty space. But there's lots of channels out there, people who've done no-buys, people who have like really successful videos, people who are coming at it from different perspectives than me, people who are coming at it from financial perspectives, people who are doing clothing no-buys and book bans. And there's lots of inspiration to get from it. I would also like to add now in finding support, connect with a therapist. I listen, if shopping is a coping mechanism for you and you decide to go on a no-buy, my recommendation is that you should, if you're not currently talking to a therapist, find one. Like put them on backup, find their rates, because if you remove your coping mechanism, you're going to need a new one. We've already talked about that. You might need to talk to somebody about how to do just that. Maybe they can give you strategies. Maybe they can be part of your process. One really tough lesson that I learned, which I didn't share in this video because so much more was part of my journey after this video. I was one of those people who went to shopping as a coping mechanism. Removed my coping mechanism. I learned that I had been doing this for years, much longer before the no-buy, and I was kind of like this over shopper for a long time. What had happened over the last, let's say, 5-ish years before the no buy, maybe even longer, I was shopping through my problems instead of facing them emotionally. And then when I couldn't shop through them anymore, I was tasked with dealing with all of these like emotional things that I had never dealt with. And it took me a while to deal with the consequences of these things, like probably a good portion of a year. And I am like now like a thriving queen. I've dealt with them and like we're moving on. But there's like, I was not prepared for that aspect of things. And it continued after this no buy, and it kind of took a bit more time than I was expecting. So finding your community doesn't have to be like people on YouTube. It could be people to talk to. It could be a therapist. It could be like your journal and journaling out your feelings. I know that therapy is not affordable for everybody. There have been moments where I have not been able to afford it either. And my journal became my best friend, and you can do that as well. This is the last recommendation, and it's kind of funny now. Like if I were to make this video now, I would hit on some like other points. I would hit on gratitude, contentment, and habits. Like the first 3 things, I would recommend like a very different first like 90 days. And I also like wouldn't just like recommend a no buy to a lot of people. I have learned a tremendous amount since making this video. We've had more experiences, we've had more successes and more failures. And after I made this video, I basically like shopped some more because I didn't know how to handle life after my no buy. And if you do decide to go on a no buy, what I would recommend more than anything is having an exit strategy, because you will not be on your no buy forever. You can't just not shop forever. So you need to figure out, how do you start shopping? And exactly what I said about the budget earlier, like comments about the budget, I didn't stick to one right after filming this video because I had not faced or addressed my habits in the way I needed to yet. So my no buy did some great work, but it didn't do all of the work. What I'm trying to say is that you can't replicate your success of your no buy year, because your no buy year is not buying stuff. You can't have that year over and over and over again for the rest of your life. You're going to need to buy something at some point. And so addressing how to shop is going to be incredibly important, and deciding how do you want to shop? What does a good shopping habit look like to you? What does a good purchase look like to you? Like what kinds of considerations do you want to have? Those are all things to consider before leaving your no buy me. That's it for me today. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you enjoyed this walk down memory lane. And I also hope you enjoyed my updated take on this video. I would love to hear your thoughts. Also, were you around when this original video came out? Have you seen it? I'd love to hear from you. Thanks for watching and hanging out, and I hope to see you again around here soon. Bye.